Well, thank you very much for joining us, everybody. We greatly appreciate you attending today's Digital Media for Business. I think it's a pretty exciting time to really review your digital presence and how you are finding your customers. As we start to move into the world of hyper-segmentation, it's incredibly important to know whom your listeners are and where they are so that you can get your value proposition placed in front of them. First of all, I'd just like to recognize that while we are here in cyberspace, we are holding this event on the traditional territorial and ancestral lands of the Ojibwe people from Garden River and Batchewana First Nations here locally in the Sault Ste. Marie area and region. The Ojibwe people are one of the three nations that belong to the historic Three Fires of Confederacy and the traditional government of the Anishinaabe Nation. And those two other nations that participated were the Ottawa and the Potawatomi. So Algoma region is very closely tied to the history of our First Nations people. To the Anishinaabe people, this is a sacred and spiritual place and is being known in time immemorial as Bawating. And we wish to honor the original people on this part of Turtle Island, along with the diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis, as we recognize their homelands in the spirit of partnership and reconciliation. Also in June, we commemorate National Indigenous History Month. And during this month, let's take time to recognize the rich history, heritage, resilience, and diversity of our First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people across Canada. So today with us, we have Andy Smith, the Regional Digital Account Manager for Bell Media, representing Ontario, and then also key in helping us pull this event together is our local account manager for CTV and Bell Media, Stephen Dufour. We're going to be providing a link in today's session for you to contact Stephen or your local representative, as we do have some folks joining us from outside the Algoma region. And that will allow you to talk to our presenters today about how they may be able to customize some potential services for you to find your customers. So what we want to be able to do then is just to go through a quick overview. We're going to look at some effective digital products for local businesses, HTML5 display, video, connected TV, audience targeting. Andy's going to provide us with some examples of how businesses can take advantage of some of their products, and then also share some current digital trends and how they affect local businesses. We'll then wrap up with some Q&A, and then I'm just going to give a little quick presentation on the Canadian Digital Adoption Program, which is a federal program being administered by the Ontario Chamber of Commerce that offers you a few dollars to do some digital transformation, which you may identify a need for during today's presentation. As I said, we're going to watch the chat box for any of these questions that come up that are specific to these particular categories so that we can present them to Andy while he's on that particular subject matter, but also at the end, we'll have some time for some Q&A as well. So once again, thanks very much for joining us. And Andy, I will turn the program over to you.
Thank you very much, Rory. And again, thank you everybody for joining us. It's a great privilege to have you all here. And I notice there are a few of us that don't have cameras turned on. Feel free to do so. But if I catch you falling asleep, I will call you out. It happens. We've been doing this for 2.5 years. People fall asleep in these things. So yeah, as Rory mentioned, we have a lot of stuff to cover. I want to start with letting people know what Bell Media does and basically who Bell Media is, because I'm always surprised that when I have meetings like this, how little people really know about Bell Media. We're big. We do a lot of different things. So I want to make sure we kind of start at the top and then zero down to what it might look like for you guys locally, specifically in Ontario. I'll have some examples, but I'm most excited to get to the end to hear what you guys have to say. So I'll share my screen now. Just give me one moment. And if you want, just give me a thumbs up. Let me know you guys can see that.
We're good at this end, Andy.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so I want to start with a disclaimer first. So I'm going to say Bell Media is a content company first. We have a lot of content, and it gives advertisers an opportunity to get in front of and within that content. If you're currently doing search and social and it's working for you, awesome, keep doing it. I'm not here to convince you to do something else and not do that. If anything, what I'm going to show you will probably complement what you're doing with search and social. And because of that, our platforms are different, so expectations need to be different as well. We don't have the same immediacy and engagement that Facebook does, but we have a much larger reach and the ability to target in a very different way. So we'll touch on that as well. So like I said, why don't we start at the top, and I'll introduce you to Bell Media Digital. So on a national scale, we have the largest footprint online. We're reaching 82% of Canadians online, which is roughly 27 million Canadians every month. And a lot of that has to do with the kind of content we have on our sites. We have a lot of news, sports, entertainment, a lot of repeat people, obviously, coming back to our sites. The key metrics you see here kind of gives you an idea, again, on the scale and the size and what does we do and how many people are being engaged by those things. One of the key metrics I want to point out is this one right here. 67 million video streams every month, which is massive. And I'm going to show you why that number is as high as it is, because we do have a lot of video options and a lot of content to have your ads be delivered in front of or within. The digital landscape in Canada continues to change. In fact, if I were giving you, showing you this slide a couple of weeks ago, it would be different because it continues to change. So on a digital landscape perspective, we have virtually the same reach as Facebook does in Canada. Not many people know that. And every time I show this slide to people, they're shocked. So it just lets you know just how big our reach is within the country. And then what we can do within the certain areas that we deliver our content and the opportunities you have to deliver ads around them. Also, some top brands you see there, again, mentioned news, sports, the iHeartRadio network. Chances are you've listened to some, if not many of our streams on the iHeartRadio network. If you're streaming a radio station in Canada, chances are you're using the iHeartRadio network. It is massive, lots of opportunity there. And to give you an idea of what this network looks like, here are the Bell Media national brands you can have access to, and then geo-target the delivery of your ads to whatever region you like. So there's a lot of amazing brands in there. This is another slide where people realize, oh, I didn't know that TSN was part of Bell Media or eTalk was part of Bell Media. This is what you have access to in a digital space. There's amazing opportunities. I'll show you some examples of those in a few minutes. And if you have the need to reach a French audience, we have that too. Recently, we acquired, not recently, a couple of years ago, we acquired Astral, which basically consisted of most of these brands. And our newest brand on the French side is Nouveau, which has exploded in popularity. It's an incredible brand. If you're trying to reach a French audience, I highly recommend thinking about it because it's very successful and it's growing very, very quickly. So that's the national scope. Let's take a look at Ontario. Again, within Ontario alone, we still rank #1 as far as reach goes. And this is consistent. Every time we update this slide, we're consistently in the #1 spot. You can see, 2, 3, and 4 are probably some of the more common digital players in Canada and in Ontario. I'm sure most people are familiar with them, but this slide basically shows where we stand from a perspective of unique visitors and the reach we have in Ontario. And in Ontario, this shows you some of the top brands and the reach we have within them. So CTV News, CP24, and B&M Bloomberg are a triple threat when it comes to the size of the audience we have within those 3 sites. News is gigantic for Bell Media, and especially now. There's always something happening. News changes very quickly. And there's always a great opportunity to be around that news space. Sports is also great. It's seasonal and it's also up and down as far as depending on who you root for. but it's also a huge space to advertise in. And then we also have the Super Hub. I'll talk to more about that in a few minutes. That's basically our online web-based streaming platform. If you've ever been to ctv.ca, we internally call that the Super Hub. And then the iHeartRadio Canada Network, I mentioned that earlier, that's our online radio streaming platform with a huge amount of listeners as well. Okay, enough of Bell Media propaganda. Let's get to the good stuff. I want to start talking about what digital products we think. Now, again, this is just us thinking about what might work best for you guys. There are a few products in particular that I think would fit well for the kinds of businesses in your areas based on success and potential budgets in your areas. The first one I want to focus on is HTML display ads. If you're not familiar with these kinds of ads, they're a more dynamic static display ad. In fact, they tell a longer story. They're like mini web pages designed to look like an ad. I have two examples here that I will run here. The advantage of these ads is, again, they're dynamic. They draw the eye and create incredible awareness. They're really great for any business that has inventory, multiple products that you would like to talk about or have featured in some way. Or if you just want to expand your message in an ad, in a display ad, these work really well for that. And they're some of our cheapest products. These are great in the sense that any campaign can easily get into this. They're very affordable. Best thing is, in most cases, we can help with the creation of the ads as well. So not everyone has the ability to do this. That's where we can step in and help you guys. So you see in the mock-ups there where these ads would be displayed, desktop and mobile compliant. So there are no issues platform-wise. These ads are delivered on all platforms. And like I said, if we take the right creative and we target the right audience, these ads work really well. Now, like I said at the beginning, we're a content company. We're different from social media. We can never guarantee clicks, but we do guarantee the exposure. We will get your ad in front of a targeted audience. These ads will help drive clicks. Guarantee that. Next product I want to lean on, video. Rory mentioned earlier that video is one of the products we were to talk about, and video is definitely one of, if not the deepest products we have as far as availability and content within all of our platforms. If you've been to any one of our websites, you'll see video ads either before content, before a news story, or within written articles. So the two ad types for video are in-stream and out-stream. That's before content or within written content. The length of ads, we can run anything between a 6-second ad to a 60-second ad. I recommend keeping these video ads less than 15 seconds. Nobody has the attention span anymore to sit through a 30 or let alone a 60, especially on digital. Everyone's attention span on digital is shorter than anywhere else. So my recommendation is think short. In fact, you can have multiple ads running. 5 seconds doesn't sound like a lot. Believe me, 5 seconds is plenty enough time to deliver a message. And if you compound that with multiple ads, you can expand that and have different ads running as well. And the video ads we run are non-skippable. So it actually helps with our viewability rate, which ranks higher than the national average because you can't skip through these ads. So there's no waiting 2 to 3 seconds. You have to sit through the ad. Another reason why I recommend making them short, so it's not going to leave a negative impression. The positive user experience will then translate to the brand being advertised. Now I have an example here. Just want to make sure I have audio shared here. I do. Okay, so this is an example of a video that we created and is probably still running at this time. Chances are, if you're somewhere in Northern Ontario, you've seen that ad on our platforms. It's running quite regularly. And it's getting really good results. Other placements for these ads. Like I said, before content. So if you're on a news site, CTV News, being in Bloomberg or CP24, and there's a news story, a video news story, the ad will appear before that news story. That's the example on the left. And if you're reading an article, depending on the size of the article and what site you're on, the article will split open and the ad will appear there. That's the example on the right. So we have a lot of different places where ads can run, and a lot of different ways the ads can be reached in front of the audience you're looking for. In addition to all that, this is the CTV Super Hub. So this is our online web-based streaming platform. If you go to ctv.ca, you will see exactly what I'm talking about. This is where people come to watch all of the programming on demand. And there's both display and video opportunity here, mostly video. Obviously, that's what people are coming to watch. And just like the other ads, anything that appears here video-wise, you cannot skip through. So these are great opportunities to reach people who aren't watching so much linear television. They're watching content when they want to watch it. And just like everything else I've shown you, this can also be geo-targeted pretty much to any location you want, down to a postal code if necessary. So it's a really great way to target the ad delivery in front of the content to an audience you're looking for. This is a really great place to deliver video ads because you've got a captured audience watching our content right here.
Andy, question for you.
Yes.
Sorry. When you're geo-targeting and you talk about the potential of selecting postal codes, does your analytics guide the advertiser to what particular areas might be best suited to the message they're delivering? Or is that sort of up to the customer to determine the geography or the area for geo-targeting?
It would kind of be, it could be a combination of both. Depends ultimately on the advertiser, what it is they want to do, and ultimately who they want to reach. In a couple slides, I'll get to what the typical strategy is and what the workflow might look like. But yeah, we can predetermine where some of the postal codes or geo-targeting regions can be based on some of our data. But I'll be honest, in most cases, it's the advertiser telling us where their customers are. And depending on how we've targeted, the data that we collect while the campaign is running actually helps us learn more about where people are coming from or who's being engaged by the ads. And in many cases, that data surprises the advertiser and learns from it as well. So it could be a combination of things, Rory, to be honest with you. But we're flexible. We can work in a bunch of different ways.
Thank you.
Yep. And then here are some examples of where those ads would be on the Super Hub and what they would look like. So if you're watching anything on the Super Hub on a web browser, it basically takes over the entire screen. So it's like watching television in a web browser on our platform. Our final video product to review today is something called Connected TV. If you're not familiar with it, it's basically the same thing as the Super Hub, but on a third-party device. So if you have something like a Roku or an Apple TV or a Google Chromecast, and you have the CTV or TSN apps installed on those devices, you have access to all of our content. And just like the Super Hub, you can select a show and then watch whatever you want, whenever you want. And same thing, the ads will appear before and during the content. Only difference between the Connected TV and all of the other video products, click-throughs don't typically happen on Connected TV because at this point you're watching it on an actual television and people aren't poking their TV the way they would on a mobile device. But if you're watching Connected TV on a tablet, we can then get clicks that way. This is a really great branding awareness product. And it's a perfect extension to a typical linear campaign, TV campaign, because you want to get people wherever they're watching content. Maybe they're sitting on their couch watching actual television, linear TV. Maybe they're going to stream something later. It's virtually the same audience. And to give you an idea of the kinds of shows that people are watching on our platforms, the chart on the right is our top connected show list. There's a ton of stuff in there. Again, this is always changing as well. The typical prime time when people watch TV still translates to connected television and streaming TV as well. Between 8 o'clock and 11, that's when most people are watching something, just like they would be watching linear television. And for some reason, Who's the Boss is always in this list. People love Tony Danza, like they should. And then as far as a demographic breakdown for our connected TV and streaming audiences for both CTV and TSN, here's the general demographic. So you can see quite a few people in the, I guess you could call it millennial phase to the boomer age group for more or less both, but they tend to have a bit more money. This is an audience that is quite affluent. Obviously, they're investing in a little bit more technology. So it would require a little bit more of an investment, but this is also a great way to reach anybody. This is a general audience watching content, all kinds of shows like you saw on that list before. It's not catering to any one group. So if you're looking to start a branding campaign, the connected TV and/or Super Hub is a great place to start. Now, everything I've shown you can be targeted. I mentioned geo-targeting earlier. The true power behind everything I've shown you can be targeted to an audience. So at the very beginning, I mentioned that we're a content company. We're also a data company. If you didn't know, we're constantly collecting data on everything you do. If you're a Bell customer and you have a Bell mobile phone or a mobility plan, we're collecting data. If you have Bell Internet, we're collecting data. You have Bell 5, we're collecting data. And it's all being collected for a reason for this. You can target pretty much anybody across all of our platforms and using any of those products I just showed you. So if you want to reach, let's say, travel enthusiasts or someone interested in certain kinds of sports, we can target those people very specifically in a specific geographic location and only deliver ads to those people on our platforms. Every digital solution starts here. The first question you're going to hear me ask you in a conversation about our products is, who do you want to reach? What does that targeted audience look like? Then we work backwards from there and figure out, okay, where are we going to find them? Then we're going to ask you, what do you want to say? Because then the creative is just as important in the campaign as any of the other targeting and the products themselves. So we want to make sure we target an audience, deliver them the right message, and then capture them in a way that then drives them to wherever it is you want them to go. It could be your website, wherever it is. So this is going to be the first step in every conversation we have with digital. Like you can see here, this is just an example of some of our what we call pre-built segments. We have many pre-built segments. And in fact, we have almost 1,000 data sets that we have access to. So we can target pretty much anyone. If you're a retail business selling shoes, we actually have a filter for people interested in buying shoes. I mentioned travel enthusiasts. Now is a really interesting time to be advertising about travel information because nobody knows what's going on with travel because it's constant misinformation. So if that's your business and you want to let people know what the truth is about travel information, we can target them on our networks very easily. And if we don't have a pre-built segment, we can create one for you from all of the data sets that we have. Now, we'll touch on some digital trends that we're seeing. Now, there are many. All you have to do is Google digital trends 2022 and you'll spend hours going through all of it. But I've chosen 3 specifically that I think would work best for most of the people here, if not all of you. And they're quite long-term. In fact, these are things that I would recommend looking at for not just this year, but moving on for many of your campaigns. So if it wasn't obvious, I'm a huge fan of video. The first digital trend is to embrace AVOD, which is ad-supported video on demand, which we have lots of. It's an audience that's grown incredibly. In fact, on our platforms, it's almost quadrupled since March of 2020. More people at home streaming something on some kind of device, on some platform. You can see the charts on the right, the ad spending within connected TV and overall video ad spending is increasing dramatically. So this is a space that I highly recommend you think about and don't be deterred by potential investments. there's almost always a way we can get video campaigns for almost any budget. Now, in most cases, there is a minimum we recommend. We can figure that out very quickly. The next trend I want to focus on is get acquainted with Gen Z. If you don't know what Gen Z is, this is anyone who's aged 10 to 25. I have 2 of them myself, and they basically run the house because they decide what we do because they're constantly connected to something. This is the largest demographic group in the world now. There are more Gen Zs than boomers. And that just happened in the last couple of years. These are people constantly connected to some kind of device, and they are dictating how technology, and in most cases, how advertising is moving forward. So if they're not your demographic or your audience yet, I recommend at least considering them because they're going to be eventually. They may not be the primary spenders, most cases it's their parents, but they will eventually be the primary spenders and they will have money. And the last trend I want to touch on is something that has happened just in the last couple of years because of COVID. Be genuine and informative in your advertising. I think it's important for everyone to kind of take a step back and figure out what's most important. We're constantly being bombarded by ads. So take advantage of the time that someone is paying attention to your ad and find a way to connect with them beyond a price point or a hard sell. Now, the bullet points here, I'll go through them quickly. These are the kind of the things I would recommend you at least consider when creating an ad or thinking about a campaign. First one is focus on your customer in the messaging. How are you going to help them? And the second one is focus on providing value and information. Your ads should be teaching people about you. Now, I know what you're thinking, Andy, you're contradicting yourself because that's the exact opposite of the first bullet point. But the third bullet point covers the fact that you can run multiple ads. Just keep the tone consistent of your messaging. And in fact, having multiple ads running is a great way to find out which ads are being most engaged by your audiences. Tell your story. Don't tell your competitor's story. Don't try to chase whatever it is your competitors are doing. Be unique in your ads. Tell your own. Use humor when appropriate. I know there are some businesses that might challenge or might have a challenge doing that. If you're in the funeral business, not sure what you can do there. I'm sure there is a way. But if you can use humor, I recommend doing it because people remember funny ads more than anything else. Think of Super Bowl ads. They're always the funny ones that people remember. And if you have a service or product expert, think about having them in the ad because people like to see a person be the expert in the space or whatever it is you're advertising, whatever your service or product is, so they can relate to that individual. And then focus on the product or service's benefits as opposed to the features. How is the product or service going to help someone, your customer, as opposed to all the neat things it does and what it might cost? And then finally, kind of to wrap all of this up, strive to make relevant and emotional connections in your ads. Emotion wins over logic every time. If you can connect on an emotional level versus a logical one, you've got them. So these are all at least the trends I'm seeing right now. And in fact, moving forward, I'm sure there are versions of this that will continue on. So again, these are all trends that I've noticed. There are many, many more. And in fact, maybe in a future seminar, we can cover more. But these are the ones I selected to cover off with you guys. And that, everybody, is it. Hope I didn't put anyone to sleep.
That was a ton of information in a very quick time. So please, folks, if you have any questions about some of the trends or services, we know Andy is an expert in this particular area, so we'd be more than happy to answer any of those questions.
And I know we have some of our other Bell Media experts on the call with us. So if there's something I can't answer, I'd be more than happy to have them jump in.
So I guess, Andy, a question on our side is, if we go in and you pick a particular segmentation that you want, and, can we sort of like target if you're a firm in Sault Ste. Marie and all you want is Sault Ste. Marie customers that watch the hockey game? Is that something that you can achieve through this geo targeting? And
Yeah. So just to clarify, geo targeting is identifying people based on where they are. That's one. But we can also target people based on their interest and behavior. That would be two. So if you want to target people interested in watching hockey in Sault Ste. Marie, I can do that very easily.
and if you're a company in Sault Ste. Marie but want to target somebody in Kingston,
Yep.
you know, with a similar profile, and maybe you have established you know, an online shopping presence, you know, is that something that you can also do?
Absolutely. There are no limitations to where we can geo-target. So if you're a business in Sault Ste. Marie, let's say someplace that you rely on people outside of Sault Ste. Marie to come in, maybe it's a tourism-based business, and you want to deliver your message to places outside, we can target those areas and then bring them into where you are.
Interesting, interesting. And if you have sort of multiple locations, you know, so maybe you've got 3 or 4 locations in Ontario, can you pull your resources together and then do sort of geo targeting, if you like, in those particular marketplaces? But, you know, sort of for businesses, 4 different geographies, but looking to package together a marketing effort under, you know, a consolidated, because obviously I think volume kind of dictates price outcome, right?
Well, not in every case, no.
Okay.
I mean, it's not like you know, you're buying tires at Costco or something. It's more like, let's identify, like I said at the beginning, who are you trying to target? Because if these 4 businesses technically want to target 4 different kinds of audiences, I would recommend splitting this into 4 different campaigns. If the 4 businesses are looking for the same kind of audience, then yeah, we could find a way to target those places together, but then look at maybe 4 different kinds of ads running.
Interesting. We got a question here from Megan McDonald. Great content and things to think about in terms of content created, let's say in video. And are these ads then owned by the firm or company, or are they exclusive to use by a Bell Media for the campaign or future campaigns with Bell Media? So I'm guessing what I'm reading here is if we develop a campaign with Bell Media, can I own that campaign as the business and plug that campaign through another media outlet?
Any video that we create for you for a digital campaign, you get to keep. So you can put it on your website, you can put it on your social media platforms, you can do whatever you want with it.
Interesting, interesting. No, that's great. And then what about content creation? I know we talked a little bit about, you know, it kind of gets driven from the advertiser telling you what they're looking for. But that messaging, can it be crafted with your content creators? You know, that guidance. So somebody like Steven can talk about, you know, the customer attributes that, you know, that would lead to the best return on a digital campaign.
As far as ad creation goes, we can absolutely help with that. We do have creative teams pretty much in every market that can look at helping create the ads, whether they be display or video. So that's definitely something that we can do. That comes down to, you know, after that first conversation, we find out what it is you want to do, who you're trying to reach. Somewhere in there, we'll identify how we can help with the ad creation. So you do have the ability to lean on us for that as well.
Interesting. And we have a question here from Brianna. Do you see the ad-supported video on demand trend changing as the world opens up and people spend less time streaming? So I guess there is, you know, 2.5 years in a pandemic forced people to screen time. Do we see that changing and that trend changing?
I don't see it changing dramatically in the sense that as things start to open up, and in fact, things have, we haven't seen a trend, a dramatic trend anyway, downward in the number of connections, the number of streams, or the size of the audience within our streams. I don't, because I think that whatever habit has been created in the last 2.5 years is locked in. Most people, I think, have started habits during COVID that they can't get rid of. Not that that's a bad thing. Maybe people have picked up great habits and have continued doing those. I think streaming is part of that. I think once you've been introduced to how easy it is to consume content this way, why would you go back? And that's nothing to say, linear television won't see a growth either. I think they'll work together. In fact, I just saw a chart this morning from the same source of the charts that I showed you earlier, showing that linear television and ad-supported streaming TV budgets are going to increase overall in the next 4 years. So if that tells me that, the audience isn't going to change that much.
Interesting. I know our household does not have TV. So the linear TV, all of the stuff that we have is stream content, basically, like you're saying, and or connected, and using some of those particular services. Another question for you, sort of in the segmentations of markets and gaining access. What if you have a particular product or service that's specific to a particular culture? Let's say I'm producing something that is specific to a Hispanic marketplace. Are we able to access that kind of demographic? Layered on top of that, again, let's say I want a Hispanic male entrepreneur.
Wow, that's really specific. Okay. Tough, because we don't have any way to target by ethnicity. So that's not kind of data that people share with us.
Right.
And we're able to target based on how, I guess we haven't really talked about that. How are we collecting this data specifically? I mean, they're sharing some kind of information with us based on what they've done on our platforms, the kind of stories they read, the kind of content they consume. So ethnicity is not something they typically share with us. So it's really hard to target that. However, we can target by location. So if there are community centers or areas within communities that typically have a certain group of people you're trying to reach, we can try that. But that's where I would also talk about the ad creation itself. Have the ads do some of the work for us. And my colleague Jay just reminded me, we have access to Environics data where we can tap into some of that.
Okay.
It's not typically data that we're collecting, but it is out there. So we can target the individual you mentioned specifically if we need to. Now, I will say this, the more targeted you are, the harder it is to deliver ads.
Right.
So it's going to be really, really difficult to get the impressions you're looking for when you're super targeting either a small group of people or a specific kind of person. So just keep that in mind. My recommendation is to find that audience, target them, take a step out, because there's always going to be some kind of crossover that you may miss if you target too much.
Interesting. And then a question here from Fernando. One around what's the typical starting budget, for advertising, and it's a two-parter. And the second really is I think a great question about how these type of digital campaigns work for business to business, and in Fernando's case, an engineering company trying to target perhaps procurement and buyers in an industrial setting. So, Sault Ste. Marie, we're a large industrial steel town, and, maybe we have an engineering company here that wants to broaden their horizon into Calgary. How would a campaign like this kind of work for something along those lines?
So the first half about budget, very difficult question to answer, but it's the most common one asked, in the sense that every digital solution we come up with is customized to that particular need. So budgets are different across the board. I mean, you could spend as much as $50,000. You could spend as little as $1,500 a month. It depends on that first conversation we have. We identify, who do you want to reach? What do you want to say? When do you want to do this? What's your measurement of success? And we eventually get to that budget and figure out what this might cost. Everything I showed you today has a CPM. cost per thousand. It's impression based for the most part. So it all comes down to scale and reach. So I wish I could give you a number, but it's going to be different for everybody. And we don't typically do option A, B, or C, because that wastes everybody time. We offer one option that we think is going to work the best based on our experience, based on what we know about our products and what we learned from you in that first conversation. The second part of that question.
Yeah, I'm just going to comment, Andy, on the costing thing. You know, when I did my MBA in the marketing space, and reach and frequency was obviously the center of that conversation. But general rule of thumb that I kind of there's always these 10 impressions will lead to this, 20 impressions will lead to that. I've always used the basic axiom that by the time you as the advertiser are sick of the message, your consumer's just starting to listen. So you got to keep that in mind, right? That reach and frequency is absolutely key. And, try taking a one-page advertisement out in a printed newspaper, that's not going to yield you really any consumer response, right? Because you don't have the reach. You may have the reach, but you don't have the frequency. And in today's market, it's a pretty crowded space out there. So
totally,
those
especially on
really,
digital.
Yeah, most definitely. So I just wanted to pass those comments on. And Andy, sort of now on the second part of that question, the business to business digital campaign.
So like I said earlier, I mean, we can target anybody anywhere. So for B2B, we actually have a ton of audience targeting abilities for different kinds of business to business opportunities. Most of it's tech based. So if you want to reach business owners, decision makers in a tech space in Calgary, we can absolutely do that. There are very few limitations we have when it comes to the kind of targeting, aside from obviously some of the data we don't necessarily collect, like I said earlier, but that is definitely doable. It comes down to a combination of finding the right kind of business owner in the right kind of field, and then where are they in the world, and then deliver the ads to those people there. Totally doable.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, even a good example, maybe like if that the majority of your buyers are, say, in the oil and gas sector, and they tend to be predominantly, NHL, hockey watchers, is that a good space for you to put a message?
In a hockey,
yeah, I mean, like just say, like, from your own, consumer analysis that many of your purchasing agents and your buyers, watch hockey. And so putting something on, Hockey Night in Canada might be an effective way to reach a business consumer.
If you have an audience that does that, then my recommendation would be deliver an ad on TSN and have the ad somehow focused around hockey. Obviously without using logos or specific words or names that you're not allowed to use, but use interesting words like hole in one or score, or interesting sport terms that would affiliate themselves to that kind of content. It would naturally connect with that audience immediately, kind of like some of the bullet points I mentioned in that third trend. Find a way to connect with that audience using words and terms and themes that they would be familiar with.
What is the role in digital media of a spokesperson, and whether that be an expert, or you mentioned a little bit of an expert, but what about a celebrity or a sports star, somebody you can connect with? What's the space now? How's it reacting in the digital space with those kind of traditional spokesperson roles?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ways you could do that. That's typically considered an endorsement. So if you have a celebrity that you want to be the face of whatever your business is and be affiliated to your brand, there are a lot of different ways you could do that. On video ads, it's typically someone introducing the product or the service, or somehow they're featured in the ad. You see a lot of influencers on social media kind of doing the same thing. I mean, if you're asking, is that something Bell Media does? We do have the ability to include some kind of influencer campaign options. Depending on, again, who you're trying to reach and where these ads are going to go, the options I've shown you in this seminar would probably be where you should start first. If you've already established someone who's the expert in your field or your endorser or influencer, we can still translate that to some of our ads as well.
Interesting. Interesting. And what if you want to run a digital cycle that's based on whatever the most current attention getting news story is, right? So you know, we just looked at the most recent court coverage with Johnny Depp and Heard. What if you wanted to plug a digital campaign and your messaging was appropriate, but your digital campaign into those viewers that are paying attention? Is that a possibility?
Well, like I said earlier, I mean, news is our deepest platform because there's just so much content within news. CTV News, BNN Bloomberg, and CP24, the three of those combined drive most of the traffic of all of our sites. The idea to try to deliver ads during really specific times of news, like the news story you recommended, is very difficult because news is constantly changing. All it would have taken was a larger news story to knock that story out and then have a different news story kind of kick in. And then if you were focusing your ads to just one news story, you would have lost out on potential eyeballs. So I wouldn't necessarily focus on the news story, definitely the news platform, because there's constantly an ever-growing audience on the news platforms all the time. And repeat eyeballs. People go to the news sites regularly, more than once a day. So if that's something you're looking to do, definitely something to look to reach people very specifically in the news. And then you can also add some kind of targeting in there as well if you needed to.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I'll turn to the audience again, sir. And there any questions from the audience? If you want, unmute, go ahead and feel free to ask Andy whatever's top of mind, or put it in the chat. It is up to you. Is there is there any a recommendation from yourself or Stephen? Where is a great place to start if you're considering expanding your marketing efforts into the digital space? And what are some of the key things that you should be considering as you start to formulate your plan?
Well, it always starts with a conversation. And in any meeting that Stephen and I have with a potential advertiser, it starts with 5 questions. I kind of touched on them earlier. And the first one is, who do you want to reach? That always is where we start, because then that'll determine what we do next. Next question typically is, what do you want to say? Because that will then help us figure out what is the creative going to do. When do you want to do it? Timing is, in most cases, very important part of the campaign. What is your measurement of success? Constantly changes, because once we've identified what your measurement of success is, it helps us figure out what product might be the best for you. And measurement of success could be anything from creating awareness, which we can absolutely do, all the way down to lead generation, which is much more difficult to do, but also to quantify. And then obviously the last question is, what kind of a monthly threshold do you have to put towards a campaign? Because once we've identified what a month looks like, we can multiply that based on whatever we found out in the previous 4 questions. And to your point, Rory, this isn't gonna, you're not gonna see results immediately. That's what, unfortunately, Facebook has done to most advertising expectations, is that people expect to see results immediately. This takes time. You know, advertising, really good advertising, still takes time to breathe and develop a connection and create some kind of awareness. There used to be a stat that said how many times people need to see an ad before they think they've seen it once. That number keeps changing. The most recent one is 10. The average person needs to see one ad 10 times before their brain registers it as seeing it once, which is insane. And it's not so much, like you said earlier, Rory, you know, people get sick of it. It's more like, oh, now that ad means something to me, I'm going to be engaged by it. So basically it all comes down to first conversation. We do a bit of discovery and digging, and then we figure out what happens next. Stephen, I noticed you want to say something.
Yeah, actually, Andy, thanks for the opportunity again, Rory and your team. Every client is different. Every business is different. Every opportunity is different, and target market as well, and your audience. So coming up with those ideas and your creative is where we come in as well, and really push that message out there for you. It's something Andy and I have done over and over again to access our unique opportunities with Bell Media. And it's very exciting for us to be able to, show those successful results at the end and continue to work with clients. So if there's anybody out there, if you have any questions for myself or Andy, we can set up some introduction meetings after this. And please share your ideas or questions.
Yeah, as well, Maggie's going to post a link here in the chat box, so I will refer people to that. And if you go to that link, you'll be able to fill in some information and get connected to Stephen or whomever's responsible for these campaigns in your particular area. So Maggie's now put that link in the box. We would love your responses on this as well to get your feedback on today's session. And just before we start to close things off, I'll just go to the floor if there's any more questions. I'm going to spend a couple minutes just introducing a couple slides here on the Canadian Digital Adoption Program, and it's some funding that's available for those looking at digital transformation. So are there any more questions from our audience today? Feel free to unmute and ask away. In that case, I will share my screen then and just do a quick introduction here of a program that you can gain access to. And I see somebody's got some notes there for me as well. But so the Canada Digital Adoption Program, so this is administered by the Ontario Chamber of Commerce and funded through the federal government. So as part of this program, it is getting to small business owners to receive a micro grant worth up to $2,400 to help get their businesses online and give their e-commerce presence a boost or digitize business operations. The grant recipients must commit to maintaining their digital adoption strategies for at least 6 months. So in addition, these e-commerce advisors are available to work with the recipients to help identify their digital needs, provide links to the digital resources, and help in completing those applications and answers to grow your business online. So it's an excellent program. Eligibility, a for-profit business, including for-profit social enterprise and cooperatives, registered or incorporated business, consumer facing, a business that can be accessed by customers or provides in-person services to customers, as a business with a minimum of 1 employee other than the business owner. Non-eligible corporate chains, franchises, registered charities, representatives of multi-level companies, real estates, agents and brokerages, and not-for-profit organization. And you'll see here a number of those expenses that are eligible for you. And you certainly can go to the website here at occ.ca/grow-your-business-online or contact directly to those folks. So that's a great program. There are also local delivery agents in here. Sault Ste. Marie, particularly our innovation center, is responsible for managing the program that is available at higher levels of compensation and granting opportunity. So, certainly feel free to explore the Canadian Digital Adoption Plan, and you will see some good opportunities to help digitize. Also, if you go to our website, www.ssmcoc.com, you'll see the Rapid Activation Program, which is offered by the Toronto Regional Board of Trade. And it's a great resource for you to explore your needs for digital transformation. So there's some great resources available to you to help address your digital needs. So before we part company, Andy, Stephen, any final remarks?
Well, I hope they're not final remarks. If anything, I hope people have learned something. Every time I do these seminars, I typically learn something as well. I mean, the questions being asked are great. It helps me kind of understand what people are more interested in and what it is they're trying to do. We're all kind of in this together. So hopefully, if you look at that link that Maggie sent out, and if there's anything you need, even just feedback, if you're just looking for ideas on something, feel free to fill out whatever you can in that form. Stephen and I will reach out to you and set something up. Or if you want to be more specific and let us know if there's something you're trying to do in an advertising capacity, same thing. We'll reach out to you and set something up and have a deeper conversation, because that's where the next step should be, is having a discovery conversation of some kind to identify what it is you need. And hopefully, like I said, you've learned something and you can take that moving on.
Fantastic. Stephen, any comments from you as our local contact?
Yeah, like Andy said, I'd be the first line of to connect with, and from there I would either bring in Andy and either Laureen Richards, who's assisting as well. And we're always here and open to ideas and share some content with you and really drive that information that you require, come up with some ideas creatively and some a plan to move forward. So we're always open to any questions that you might have, or some things that you're doing already to complement.
Excellent. Stephen, thank you very much. Andy, thank you very much. Really much appreciate you spending some time with us today. And we will be providing the recording out to those folks who attended and were not able to attend. We'll also be pushing that out through our communications as well to a broader audience. So again, thank you very much appreciated, folks, and thank you very much for joining us today, and please enjoy the rest of your week. Thanks very much.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Thank you, everybody.